Welcome to Lattes and Laundry, a podcast created to keep you company as you fold the clothes or for when you take your well-deserved coffee break. Life at home, while never dull, can sometimes be a little lonesome. My hope is that this podcast makes you feel like you have a friend with you as you go about your day. I'm so glad that you're here. Hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of Lattes and Laundry. I did want to say first of all thank you to everybody who watched the last episode. If you left a comment or sent me a message, all the new people that have subscribed to this channel, I just want to thank you. I appreciate it very much. As much as I enjoy making these podcast episodes, it is a lot of work, so I always appreciate comments or messages or new subscribers or shares or anything like that. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. I hope that you are having a good Monday. I am recording this on a Friday night, and it is 11:21 on a Friday night. Typically, if my husband is off the next day, we stay up fairly late on Friday night, and he kind of does his own thing, and I do my own thing, and lately that has been recording podcast episodes. I wasn't planning to record quite this late, but I have been staring at a sink full of dirty dishes that would take me about 15 to 20 minutes to do them, but I just have not wanted to do them. Dishes is one of those chores that I just cannot stand, and I've been staring at the sink full all day. So I finally just decided to do it. I cleaned the dishes, wiped down the counters, I stuck some oranges in the dehydrator for a project that I'm working on for somebody. Just went ahead and bit the bullet and did it. So it's a lot later now that I'm recording this episode. So if I sound a bit punchy, that is why. I wanted to start this episode by reading you a verse from Proverbs that I really like. This is Proverbs chapter 15, verse 17, and the verse says, "Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith." And I love this verse because I remember when I came across it and noticed it for the first time, and that was back during some of our financial difficulties that we were going through, and we had a lot of stress that we were under, and I remember coming across this verse and thinking about how true it was, because thankfully in our situation, the difficult thing that we were going through brought us closer together. It didn't tear us apart, and I really felt like it strengthened our relationship, and we still had love between us and love in our home. And so reading that verse, it's basically saying you can have a salad, and as long as you have love in your house, it's peaceful and it's pleasant. But you could have steak, and if you have hatred in your house, it's going to be miserable. And it goes along with that idea that, all the money in the world is not going to bring you happiness and love and contentment. You can have nothing and be happy as long as you have love and peace in your home. And every time I read that verse, it just reminds me of that time. And the verse at the time brought me a lot of comfort during that season. It's kind of like the Lord saying, look, you may not have everything that you want, and you may be struggling right now and, have all these questions in your mind, but you have love in your home, and that's what matters. So I wanted to share that verse today just to kind of kick off the episode. Our topic today is internet trends and the pressure to fit in the box. I asked you guys on Instagram what you would rather me talk about, and it was almost a 50-50 split, but a few more people wanted to hear about this topic versus the other topic. I'm still planning on recording an episode on the other topic as well, but we're just going to hit this one first tonight. So I feel like when you have this conversation, there's a couple of really hard truths that you have to acknowledge. And that is that you will never be able to please everyone, and not everyone is going to like you. And that is true in your real life, and that is true on social media. And that's been a really hard thing for me to accept in my life. It's something that I've been learning over the course of my whole life. My personality, I really cannot stand it when somebody doesn't like me, when I feel like somebody doesn't like me, or, I try to please people, and I know somebody's going to be mad at me. Like, it's just something that bothers me. But over my whole life, I've been trying to learn and accept that not everyone's going to like me, and that I will never be able to please everyone. And if you're trying to please everyone, you're going to go crazy. And I feel like this is something that is important to acknowledge when you're having a conversation about social media, because especially for social media, you will never be able to please everybody. somebody's always going to be unhappy with something. And I feel like you can be the kindest, most least controversial person on the internet, and people will find a reason to be mad at you. Victoria Yost from the account Time and Tenderness on Instagram, she actually posted a reel, I believe this week, where she mentioned that she felt like the homemaking space on Instagram has changed. And that really resonated with me because I wholeheartedly agree. I think the homemaking space on Instagram has changed. And I don't know if it's because of how rapidly social media has taken off since 2020. And I feel like 2020, a lot of people came home, a lot of people started becoming homemakers, and there has been a resurgence of homemaking, which is great. Like, there's a new generation of homemakers, that's great. But I think with social media, it's just become it's almost become a trend. Like, homemaking has become, instead of being a lifestyle, the internet has kind of just seen it as a trend, and it gets looped in with a lot of other stuff. And with that comes an infiltration of people leaving nasty comments, or also this like aesthetic thing, like where you have to fit a certain aesthetic to be considered a homemaker. If you're going to fit into that trend, you have to fit into the aesthetic. Like, it's a whole thing. And I feel like that is a big reason that the homemaking space feels like it has changed. And I see a lot of similar stuff with homesteading, with crunchy community, with stuff like that. I see a lot of similarities in the way that things have changed. And it almost feels like with the internet the way it is now, you will never be homemaker enough for the internet. You will never be crunchy enough for the internet. Like, you will never be enough to suit the internet's ideal of what you're supposed to be according to what lifestyle you live, because your lifestyle has now become a trend on the internet. I saw a post not too long ago, and it was something that randomly popped up on my popular page. And it was a picture, and it had two sides to it. And on one side, it was a walk-in pantry that was full from floor to ceiling with homegrown, home-canned food. And then on the other side, it was what very obviously looked like a celebrity closet that was full from floor to ceiling with designer handbags. But the caption on the photo said, "Men, there are two types of women. Make sure that you choose wisely." And it kind of made me stop and just kind of, I was just kind of like, why can't you be both? And like, everybody has their priorities, and not everybody is interested in both, and that's perfectly fine. But why can't you be a multifaceted individual with multiple interests? Those were very extreme examples that they used in the photos, obviously. But I just don't understand the point of saying what was said on the photo, because you can be an awesome homemaker, an awesome homesteader, and still have an interest in fashion or still want a designer bag. And the point of me saying this is not even about designer bags. It's just that you can be a person with more interests than just what fits in an Instagram trend or an Instagram aesthetic. And you're not less valuable if you have multiple interests, and if you have an interest in something that maybe doesn't fit into the social media idea of your lifestyle. You can be both. You can have multiple interests. You don't have to fit into the box. And I think that's an important thing to remember, because I know that there are a lot of homemakers who feel left out of the homemaking community on social media because maybe they don't fit the Instagram aesthetic. Maybe they don't bake sourdough bread. Maybe they don't wear dresses and aprons every day. And you don't have to check all of those boxes in order to be a great homemaker. Wearing an apron doesn't make you a great homemaker. It doesn't make you any better than anybody else. It doesn't make you any worse than anybody else. Something that we really have to be careful of with social media is that we don't allow ourselves to begin comparing. And it's so easy to do. We all fall into that pit at some point in time where we begin to compare ourselves to the people that we see online. And if you allow that comparison to grow, it's going to grow into jealousy. It's going to grow into bitterness, discontentment, insecurity. It's never good. And it's very counterproductive, because you're not actively working on bettering yourself, bettering your homemaking, or whatever it is. You are looking at what somebody else is doing and allowing those feelings to just grow, and it's all negative. And I think if you look at the majority of bad comments that you see on people's videos on Instagram, most of it you can tell is because people have been comparing themselves and they're insecure and they're jealous. And I think that a really good example of this is the ballerina farm situation. She has not done anything wrong. And I think that most of the outrage and anger that you see on her comment section is because people have been comparing themselves to her. They've been comparing their life to hers, and they're jealous of what she has. And so they decide to let that jealousy and comparison just grow until it grows into bitterness and hatred and anger. And that's what all of that grows into. And I think we have to be very careful that we don't fall into that. And I don't think that anybody listening to this is going to go comment something nasty, but I'm saying that can grow inside you. You can have those feelings inside, and really, that's just about as bad because it's going to make you miserable. So we have to be very careful that we don't fall into that comparison trap. We are, looking at ourselves, doing the self-reflection, making sure the call is not coming from inside the house, like looking at what we're doing, how can we improve? And, you can find so much inspiration from people online. You can find motivation from people online. You just have to make sure that you don't allow it to become comparison. I think it's great to get inspiration from people. There is so much inspiration to be found online. But once you feel it start to cross over into some comparison, sometimes I think that's the time where we have to take the social media break. We have to maybe edit who we're following. That's usually a good sign for me when I feel myself comparing and, starting to grow a little bit resentful towards people. That's usually a good sign that I need to take a social media break. I think that we all just need to be ourselves and stop trying to conform to fit into some kind of social media box. I think that the fact that we're all different and we all have different interests and skills that we bring to the table is part of what makes social media an interesting and inspiring place to be. I think it would be a rather boring place if we were all the same. I think that it's important to understand that you can be multifaceted, that you can enjoy all different things, that you don't have to only have one interest just so that you can fit into an Instagram community. I think that it's important that we don't try to find our identity in social media and in trends and aesthetics and communities. I think that we need to understand that our identity is in Christ. I think that we need to be careful to not compare ourselves to other people on social media because that can lead us down a really bad path. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up because it is about 2 o'clock in the morning and it has taken me a very long time to get my thoughts out in a very understandable manner. I hope that you have gotten something out of this. I hope that it's been encouraging or helpful for you. If it has, please make sure to like this episode. Leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts. If you are new to this podcast, I hope that you will subscribe. And if you know a friend that you think would enjoy this podcast, please share it with them. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you guys will have a good week, and I will see you next week.